Hi everybody, Danny Bader here, and I just thought I'd drop in, in our times right now of coronavirus since March, right? So it's been, 4 months, 5 months we're coming up on. There's a lot of words out there: resilience, persistence, perspective, perseverance. And in my book, Back to Life, towards the end of the book, if you've read it, I wrote about a character in there, and it all has to do with perseverance. And I, in my tremendous creativity, you'll probably laugh, but the character's last name is Severance, right? Which is take the first syllable off of perseverance. Yeah, brilliant, right? You're probably thinking this guy's like Hemingway. Anyhow, in the book, Tim Severance is a musician that leaves, he gets out of college and he's doing some things, and he leaves and he goes to Los Angeles to make it in the music world. And he talks with the character Jake in the book, and the whole point is Tim shares his experience and his journey and his practice of the Jackrabbit principles that I've talked about before and that I write about in the book. And Tim says, I was an overnight success after 10, 15, 20 years, and we've heard that so many times. So what I'd like to offer to you right now in these challenging times, these difficult times, is what I would call the 3 P's of perseverance. And perseverance is for us to keep going even through difficult times, right? To persevere, to move through it. So to keep going through those difficult times, for me, I thought about there's 3 P's that I think we all probably need to engage in a little bit more. And they would be to play, to plan, and then to pray. So the first one, to play. Why would we want to play? Well, if you do any research on emotions, right? A lot of times emotions and feelings get all blended together and people get them mixed up. And I even do sometimes too. But if you look, there's really only 5 human emotions, which is our reaction to the events that are going on around us. And they're joy, fear, sadness, anger, and disgust. Joy, fear, anger, sadness, and disgust. So if you think about our 5 emotions right now, joy's the only one that's really positive. Although I guess sometimes, when we're angry, that anger may move us to do something positive, not to hurt somebody, but to make some changes in our own life. So think about getting back to that emotion of joy. So Monday night, I was down at the beach before I came back, down in Cape May and over Cape May National Golf Course. Every Monday night, they have a men's little 9-hole league, practice social distancing and all. And I went and I played with my brother-in-law, Danny, his son Corey, my son Joe, our son Joey, and best friend Nels. And we just played for 9 holes of golf. And, golf can be a bit of a less joyful sport for some of us. But just to get out there and play and to enjoy one another's company gave me that sense of joy. So it doesn't eliminate all the tough things that we're going through, right? As I continue to focus on my business and my brand and how to drive revenue into that, doesn't make that go away. But it also gives you a different perspective that says, I don't need to stay focused on that all the time. I can also disconnect, and I can enjoy some relationships, and I can enjoy hitting a few good golf shots or maybe making a putt. So think about, do you play enough right now? And it's funny, as I was thinking about doing this video yesterday, our daughter called Lizzie, and she was over at the high school down there working out on the track. She's a runner. And she called afterwards. She said, I am just in such a good mood right now. I'm just so happy. Joy, right? She said, I usually do my cool down on a track or a road. And she said, I decided just to run through the athletic fields there at the high school. And the sprinklers were on. So here she is, 19 years of age, just with the simple joy of running through a sprinkler, which many of us probably remember. So think to yourself, during these tough times where we've got a lot of challenges, we've got to keep our eye on, we've got to keep working, we've got to be innovative, we've got to pivot is the big word, right? Pivot out there. But are you playing enough? Are you just engaged in a play I think is defined as a pleasurable act for no specific purpose? You just go out and you engage in something to have a hell of a good time. So play a little bit more. The second P around perseverance is to plan. So there are a lot of things with coronavirus right now that we cannot control, right? And we all get that. But there's a lot that we can control. Some of you have watched my podcast with Lizzie when she had the brilliant line. She said, life's not canceled. So to persevere now, I can sit and I can plan. I say, okay, for the next 7 months, what needs to happen for me in my business? in terms of book 4 and some ideas I have for that. What needs to happen for me in my webinars in my business? What needs to happen for me in having more people on my podcast and also being on more podcasts? Because when you start to plan, there's a little bit of good energy, there's a little bit of joy, and then that can convert down to action. So while we can't control coronavirus, what can Danny influence and control around what he's working on? Same for you. So in business, what else can you control in your relationships? How can you build them? How can you heal them? How can you strengthen them? What can you focus on in terms of your health and your exercise and your walks and your runs? Listen, a Broad Street run in Philadelphia moved from May until October. Now it just got canceled. Well, okay, great. So the 10-mile Broad Street run is not putting pressure on my ass to run and get ready for a race. You don't need that. You can still go run, watch your diet, watch your intake of food and alcohol and all those things, and plan for the next 6-7 months of what's it going to be like when you get there, right? What's the story? What are you going to look like? What's the business going to look like in relationships? So make sure you do some planning, right? And there was a guy once, he said, a plan relieves the torment of choice. You've got a good plan for the day and the week. Okay, now you're focused. And you all know we get what we focus on, right? Certainly a mantra of Jack Rabbit. And the last one then, so we play, we plan, and then we pray. And prayer is the act of a request, a solemn request to God, right? Or to another object of worship. So for me, I pray to God. You may engage in some type form of prayer that you don't call it God. You know, interesting statistics that I saw, people were asked, and they said, how many people believe in God? And it was some research we did for our online course. We'll be relaunching that soon. About 50% of the people said we believe in God, right? 5 out of 10. So I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. But here was a more interesting part for me. Of the 50 people that said they did not believe in God, and they talked a little bit more, they said, we don't call it God, but we believe in something bigger. The universe, the consciousness, my intuition, perhaps it's a God of another faith that has a different name. So it was interesting then, when you ask the question, believe in God, if you take it bigger, do you believe in something bigger than us? It was about 85-90% of the people that believed in that. So here's an article that I came across that's called Prayer May Reshape Your Brain and Your Reality. So think about the reality in right now. COVID, difficult times for sure in so many ways. Canceled school, canceled sporting events, canceled weddings, can't attend funerals of the loved ones that we've lost during this time. Andrew Newberg is a neuroscientist at the University of Pennsylvania. So listen to this. He's been scanning the brain of religious people for more than a decade. He has found that people who meditate and pray, from Franciscan nuns to Tibetan Buddhists, right? So no association of religion now. It's not about religion. It's about disconnecting from the craziness of this world sometime and going inside. He said from those nuns and the Buddhists, it go dark in the parietal lobe. So there's all these lobes in our brain that I don't necessarily understand how they do what they do, but I'm really interested in what they do. And the parietal lobe is the area of the brain that is related to sensory information and helps us form a sense of self. So when we pray and we meditate, that part of our brain that has self, Danny Bader, right? Kathy, Kim, Steve, some of you people I see watching right now, that's that sense of self. Well, our sense of self is in this world right now with our challenges, right? And we have to be there, and we have to fight like hell, right, to persevere. But what happens for me, what's interesting is when that part of our brain goes dark, right, the sense of self kind of dissipates and disappears. And I think it's really, really important in terms of perseverance because there is tremendous strength in something bigger than us. And when I read the article, it really related to the accident that I had years and years ago when I died. I was 28, but it's just ingrained in my fabric. Danny Bader's body laid on the dry July ground with holes in his feet from 8,000 volts of electricity. So my sense of self as Danny Bader was gone. But the experience that I have was that energy that's still a sense of myself merged with a larger sense of energy, a larger energy, which I call God. because I was no longer Danny Bader when I had that, you know, a doctor once said I had a loss of consciousness, and I'm like, no, doc, I know what a loss of consciousness. I've drank way too much and passed out. I've been hit in the head playing basketball and got knocked out. I know what a loss of consciousness is. So for me, I call it a UOC. It was almost a union of consciousness. This energy inside of Danny Bader that kind of makes this physical body run that needs to deal with coronavirus, it left and it joined with that. So what I'm suggesting to you, what I'm offering to you, those of you that pray, you know it. Those of you that meditate, those of you that don't, just experiment with it. I'm not here to tell. Telling doesn't work. Anybody has little kids and you know telling doesn't work. You've got to get them to think differently. So if there's an energy in us quieting that part of our brain that identifies us as self, and self has problems, if we can get outside and connect to that higher source of energy, I know we come back and we engage with our problems at a greater level and a greater level of perseverance. So the 3 P's of perseverance, right? Play a little bit more, plan out the next 7 months for yourself in all those key areas, and make sure that you quiet down and pray and connect with something bigger. I think you'll be sure that you'll be happy that you will. So until the next one, I wish you all the best. I love you all. Press on, run the race, keep the fight, keep the faith, and persevere. Peace out.